Have you ever stared at the pile of unread books on your nightstand and felt a sudden, heavy wave of guilt? You bought them because you desperately wanted to change your life. Each spine represents a profound promise you made to yourself about finally getting your act together. There's the one about waking up early, the guide to financial freedom, and that bestseller on overcoming anxiety. When you swiped your card to buy them, a massive surge of hope flooded your chest. For a few hours, you genuinely believed that the cashier ringing up your purchase was witnessing the birth of a brand new you. You went home, brewed a fresh cup of coffee, and cracked open the first chapter with absolute, unbroken focus. Highlighting a powerful quote on page 12 made you feel like you were already making massive progress. Then, the weekend ended, Monday morning arrived, and your digital alarm clock went off at 6. Instead of leaping out of bed like the wealthy author suggested, you hit the snooze button 4 consecutive times. By Wednesday, the revolutionary paperback migrated from your hands directly to the bedside table. A month later, it was buried securely under a pile of laundry, completely and utterly forgotten. Nothing in your daily routine actually shifted, despite the life-altering knowledge currently sitting in your bedroom. Does this painful, repetitive cycle feel uncomfortably familiar to your reality? Are you someone who constantly consumes podcasts, online courses, and literature about personal growth yet remains entirely stagnant? If so, you probably carry a heavy, invisible burden of shame everywhere you go. Your close friends might even casually admire your dedication to self-improvement, seeing you as someone deeply invested in the future. Inside your own head, however, a cruel inner critic constantly whispers that you are a highly educated imposter. Society looks at this specific behavior and casually slaps the label of laziness right across your forehead. Charismatic motivational speakers shout from digital stages that you simply lack fundamental willpower. Internalizing those harsh, unforgiving judgments only makes the thick walls of your mental prison stronger. But what if the tragic story you tell yourself about your own failure is completely backwards? Consider the profoundly liberating possibility that your overflowing bookshelf is not a monument to a weak character. It is actually a fascinating, highly predictable map of a deeply human biological glitch. Understanding this hidden, sticky trap requires looking closely at how the human brain processes the concept of future achievement. Behavioral psychologists refer to this specific, widespread phenomenon as vicarious goal satiation. Explaining this complex mechanism in simple terms reveals exactly why seeking advice is quietly ruining your ability to act. Human brains are ancient, incredibly efficient prediction machines, wired millions of years ago to ensure basic physical survival. Whenever you vividly imagine doing something positive, your mind literally simulates the actual physical experience in real time. Reading a highly detailed chapter about eating healthy triggers the exact same neural pathways as actually chopping raw vegetables. Dopamine plays a crucial, highly misunderstood, and central role in this invisible psychological loop. Pop culture constantly tells us that dopamine is merely the simple chemical of joy, pleasure, and passive celebration. Neurologically speaking, it is actually the raw biological currency of motivation, intense craving, and the aggressive pursuit of a reward. Purchasing a self-help guide instantly spikes this powerful chemical because your primitive brain recognizes a solid survival plan. Consuming those highly motivational words creates an intoxicating, massive flood of forward-moving energy inside your skull. Your mind accurately registers your strong, genuine intention to change your current circumstances. It then immediately rewards you with a beautiful, deeply satisfying feeling of actual accomplishment. Here lies the brutal, incredibly subtle trap that catches millions of highly intelligent people every single year. Because the biological reward is fully delivered during the safe planning phase, execution feels entirely pointless to your nervous system. Vicarious goal satiation essentially means your body believes the hard work is already completely finished. Why would an energy-conserving organism endure the terrible friction of a cold morning run when it already received the biochemical trophy? Feeling deeply successful simply by passively reading about success is the ultimate paralyzing illusion. Constant consumption quickly becomes a highly addictive substitute for taking the messy, uncomfortable actions required to actually move forward. Massive, billion-dollar global industries are built entirely upon successfully exploiting this exact loop of human neurobiology. Publishers fully understand they are rarely actually selling a practical, step-by-step manual for daily behavioral shifts. Marketing efforts aggressively push the pure, unadulterated feeling of sudden progress, packed neatly into 300 crisp pages. Buying the latest digital product offers the absolute cheapest, fastest hit of transformational dopamine legally available. Collecting these thick volumes slowly transforms you into a professional consumer of hope. You quietly cease to be an active, messy participant in physical reality. Every new title gracefully offers a perfectly clean slate, temporarily washing away the painful memory of all previously abandoned attempts. Another hidden, dangerous layer of this puzzle is the incredibly comforting illusion of active learning. Gathering endless information feels incredibly productive because modern society highly praises the mere acquisition of academic knowledge. Sitting quietly on a soft couch, aggressively highlighting paragraphs effectively tricks your brain into believing deep work is happening. Real, tangible progress is almost never found safely inside the perfectly structured chapters of a global bestseller. Actual behavioral change is remarkably ugly, deeply chaotic, and highly embarrassing for the human ego. It is completely devoid of the comforting cinematic background music we constantly expect. Building any genuinely new habit requires failing repeatedly, looking entirely foolish, and trying again. You must learn to sit quietly with immense, almost unbearable psychological friction. Books confidently present reality as a smooth, linear journey, moving neatly from chapter 1 directly to a triumphant conclusion. Life actively and stubbornly refuses to follow such a clean, predictable outline. Chaotic, entirely unfair variables are thrown at your face constantly without warning. When the messy reality of trying to change fails to match the smooth narrative of the text, sheer panic sets in. Assuming the wealthy author intentionally left out a crucial secret, you frantically run back to the bookstore to find the missing piece. Searching endlessly for the perfect productivity system becomes the ultimate socially acceptable method of paralyzing procrastination. Noble concepts of careful preparation are used purely as a brilliant, impenetrable shield. You use education to completely avoid the terrifying vulnerability of actually trying and potentially failing. Escaping this incredibly sticky, dopamine-fueled trap requires a total, ruthless demolition of your current approach to personal growth. Recognizing that you already possess more than enough raw information is the first, terrifying, necessary step. Everything you genuinely need to know about saving money, fixing your diet, or finding inner peace is already stored in your memory. Lack of knowledge has absolutely not been your actual problem for at least the last 5 consecutive years. The true, hidden deficit lies entirely in your willingness to tolerate the remarkably boring discomfort of daily execution. Fasting completely from all motivational content must instantly become your new, radical baseline for true transformation. Imagine completely banning yourself from buying another guide, listening to another optimization podcast, or watching another inspiring video. Cutting off that artificial supply of cheap dopamine will initially cause a massive, highly uncomfortable internal withdrawal. Deafening silence will suddenly replace the enthusiastic, confident voices of millionaire gurus telling you exactly what to do. Sitting entirely alone in that uncomfortable quiet forces you to finally confront the terrifying emptiness of your own chronic inaction. Without a shiny new book arriving in the mail to magically save you tomorrow, the only remaining option is to start today. Messy, imperfect action must immediately replace passive consumption as your primary method of interacting with the universe. Genuine personal growth rarely ever feels like a soaring, cinematic moment of absolute clarity. Usually, it feels exactly like tying your shoes with tired hands and stepping out into the freezing rain anyway. Progress is permanently found in the deeply boring, profoundly unglamorous moments that nobody will ever write a novel about. Drinking a plain glass of tap water, staring at a blank computer screen, or choosing silence over an incredibly tempting argument are real victories. These tiny, completely invisible choices generate absolutely zero immediate dopamine, but they quietly build the permanent architecture of a new identity. Letting go of the pristine fantasy version of yourself who perfectly executes a 10-step morning routine is profoundly liberating. Embracing the highly flawed, easily distracted, deeply human version of yourself allows actual, sustainable healing to take root. Stop violently demanding absolute perfection from your fragile nervous system based entirely on the advice of a wealthy stranger. Start deeply respecting the immense, quiet courage required to simply try again after failing consistently for an entire decade. Those colorful, expensive books sitting quietly on your nightstand are absolutely not inherently evil or mathematically useless. They simply serve as beautiful, heavily marketed paper maps of a wild territory you have stubbornly refused to enter. Maps simply cannot walk the rugged, dangerous trail for you, no matter how obsessively you study their perfectly drawn lines. Look deeply at the carefully curated boundaries of the safe, highly intellectual life you have slowly constructed over the years. Notice exactly how easily you can passionately debate complex theories of habit formation without actually possessing a single good habit. Observe how fluently you speak the therapeutic language of healing, while your daily actions remain completely, totally frozen. Knowledge hoarded without corresponding physical action is merely a highly sophisticated form of self-inflicted psychological torture. You are fully awake to exactly how beautiful and expansive your life could realistically be, yet you remain completely paralyzed by the mundane, boring mechanics of actually getting there. This painful, lingering awareness is the exact heavy price paid for using lifelong education as an invisible hiding place. Stepping completely out of the safe theoretical world and heavily into physical reality requires immense, terrifying bravery. Putting down the bright yellow highlighter and actually doing the boring task forces you to confront your own profound limitations head-on. Public failure becomes a very real, highly immediate possibility the exact second you finally stop planning and start actively doing. Yet, that messy, deeply embarrassing failure is the absolute only place on Earth where genuine, lasting human transformation occurs. Endless, comfortable rehearsal phases must eventually conclude so the actual, terrifying performance of your beautiful life can finally begin. Take one last, brutally honest look at that towering stack of paper promises resting heavily on your bedside table tonight. Trace the smooth, colorful spines slowly with your fingers and acknowledge the deep, quiet fear hiding right beneath your intellectual curiosity. You have spent countless years brilliantly studying the precise mechanics of how a caterpillar supposedly turns into a beautiful butterfly. Are you truly content spending the rest of your brief, unrepeatable existence just reading perfectly written paragraphs about the sky? Or are you finally ready to build the terrifying strength required to actually fly?